we begin with that massive blow to President Trump's economic agenda. The court said that only Congress had the authority to apply such a sweeping measure.
You know, the president under our Constitution is given no power to impose tariffs. Our founders expressly gave that to the Congress in Article 1, Section 8.
History was made today. A federal appeals court has delivered a shocking judgment that threatens to unravel Donald Trump's most aggressive trade weapon. In a 7-4 decision, the court ruled that Trump's sweeping global tariffs, worth nearly $100 billion, were imposed illegally. And while the ruling leaves those tariffs in place temporarily, the United States now stands on the brink of a financial and political showdown that could reshape trade, markets, and the very limits of presidential power. This isn't just another court battle. It's the defining fight over who controls America's economy. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit handed down its decision earlier today, marking one of the most significant defeats in Donald Trump's ongoing tariff strategy. The judges concluded that Trump overstepped his authority when he invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to impose broad tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, China, India, and other countries. According to the majority opinion, the law was never intended to give presidents unilateral authority to tax imports on such a massive scale. Instead, it was designed for targeted measures in times of national crisis. By stretching the law beyond its intent, the court ruled, Trump had acted outside the boundaries of the Constitution. And while tariffs remain in effect until October 14th, giving Trump time to appeal to the Supreme Court, the decision casts a long, dark shadow over his trade policy. Since the tariffs were enacted earlier this year, the U.S. Treasury has collected nearly $100 billion in customs duties. These funds were drawn directly from importers, manufacturers, and businesses relying on foreign goods. If the ruling is upheld by the Supreme Court, much of that money may have to be refunded. To put that into perspective, $100 billion is roughly the size of India's defense budget, or the GDP of a medium-sized nation. For the U.S., refunding it would create a massive fiscal hole at a time when government debt is already at historic levels. For businesses, it could mean an unexpected windfall and cheaper imports going forward. And for consumers, it could lead to lower prices on cars, electronics, and household goods, though with uncertainty about how long that relief might last. Markets across the globe reacted immediately to today's news. In India, where goods were facing tariffs as high as 50%, stock markets surged. The Nifty and Sensex indexes opened higher, powered by strong GDP data and optimism that Indian exports may soon get a lifeline. Mid-cap and small-cap companies with heavy export exposure saw the biggest gains. In the United States, investors were more cautious. The Dow Jones futures traded flat, reflecting the tension between short-term economic relief and long-term uncertainty about what happens if $100 billion suddenly leaves federal coffers. Analysts warned that markets are bracing for the Supreme Court's involvement, which could send volatility soaring in the weeks ahead. As expected, Donald Trump came out swinging. In a fiery statement on Truth Social, he blasted the ruling as a total disaster and issued a dire warning. Without tariffs, the United States would be completely destroyed. He argued that tariffs are essential not just for protecting American industries, but for safeguarding the nation against drugs, crime, and unfair foreign competition. Trump's response was characteristically combative. He accused the judges of bias, described the majority as part of the radical left, and praised one Obama-appointed judge who had dissented as the only courageous one. His message was clear. This isn't just about trade policy, it's about his political brand, and he's not backing down. Beyond the economics, today's ruling strikes at the heart of executive power. The court leaned heavily on the major questions doctrine, a legal principle stating that sweeping economic decisions must come directly from Congress, not from vague interpretations of old statutes. By invoking this doctrine, the court effectively challenged not only Trump, but the entire idea of presidents using emergency powers to bypass lawmakers. This ruling could have far-reaching consequences. If upheld by the Supreme Court, it would limit the authority of all future presidents, Democrat or Republican, to impose large-scale trade restrictions without congressional approval. It could fundamentally reshape how America conducts its trade wars and how much power sits in the Oval Office. The story is far from over. If the justices agree to hear the case, it could become one of the most important trade law battles in U.S. history. At the same time, Trump's advisors are reportedly exploring alternative legal pathways. One option is the Trade Act of 1974, which allows for certain tariffs but under stricter rules and oversight. Another is Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which lets presidents impose duties on national security grounds, but again, with narrower limits. Whether these backup strategies can save Trump's tariff empire remains to be seen. You might be wondering, what does this mean for ordinary people? The answer is simple: your wallet. If tariffs are struck down, imported goods could become cheaper, easing inflationary pressures on families already struggling with high costs. But at the same time, a $100 billion refund would slash federal revenues, potentially increasing debt and fueling political battles over spending cuts and taxes. There's also the geopolitical angle. Countries like China, Mexico, and India are watching closely, as their exports stand to gain or lose depending on the final outcome. A rollback of tariffs could reconfigure global trade alliances, giving foreign governments more leverage in negotiations with Washington. Today's decision is about much more than tariffs. It's about the soul of American governance. Should a single president have the power to reshape the economy with the stroke of a pen, or must Congress always have the final say? This debate stretches back decades, but never before has it carried a $100 billion price tag and global consequences. The Supreme Court's eventual ruling will decide not only the fate of Trump's tariffs, but the limits of presidential authority in the 21st century. It will set a precedent for future leaders, from trade battles to climate policy to emergency actions. So here's the big question tonight. Will the Supreme Court rescue Trump's tariffs, or will it tear down his $100 billion trade wall once and for all? The answer will shape America's economy, politics, and global standing for decades to come. That's it for today's update. What do you think? Was Trump right to use tariffs as a weapon, or did the court make the right move in pulling him back? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more breaking stories that truly matter. This is one fight that's only just beginning, and the outcome could change everything.